Artemis 2 crew is go for launch. Full send.
Let's go.
Christina Cook slept upside down, suspended from the docking tunnel like a bat, zipped into a sleeping bag tethered to the wall, floating in the middle of a capsule the size of 2 minivans. Somewhere below her, Reed Wiseman had wedged himself under the instrument displays, because if anything went wrong in the night, he wanted to be the first one to see it. 4 people sharing 330 cubic feet for 10 days, with no shower, a toilet that broke within hours of launch, and the nearest coffee shop on another planet. This was Artemis 2, the first crewed flight beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo 17 in 1972, and the first serious attempt to figure out what daily life actually looks like inside NASA's Orion capsule. Eating, sleeping, staying clean. The small, unglamorous mechanics of keeping humans human inside a machine designed for efficiency, not comfort. This is what it was really like. The Orion capsule, which the crew named Integrity, launched from Kennedy Space Center on April 1, 2026, at 6:35 p.m. from Launch Pad 39B. On board were 3 NASA astronauts, Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, and mission specialist Christina Cook, along with Jeremy Hansen from the Canadian Space Agency. The SLS rocket that pushed them out of Earth's gravity produced 8.8 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. But once they were in space, the real engineering problem wasn't propulsion, it was living. Orion has about 60% more habitable space than the Apollo command module, giving the crew about as much living space as 2 minivans, shared between 4 adults, for 10 days. Once they reached orbit, the crew stowed 2 of their seats in the footpans of the other 2. Without that trick, there would have been nowhere to move. Sleep was scheduled in 8-hour blocks. For most of the mission, the 4 crew members slept at the same time in sleeping bags attached to the walls of the spacecraft. They didn't have beds. They clipped themselves to the interior walls with handrails so they wouldn't drift off in the night. Where each person attached their bag became personal preference. Coke chose the docking tunnel, head down, suspended in the middle of the vehicle like a bat. Glover found a small nook and wedged himself in. Hansen stretched out along one of the deployed seats, and Wiseman positioned himself under the displays, the safest vantage point if anything went wrong while everyone else was asleep. He later admitted that on the first few nights, every time he started to doze off, his body would tell him he was stepping off a curb, and the feeling of falling would jerk him awake. The cabin also ran cold. Glover mentioned on a downlink that he wished they had brought different sleeping bags. For the first couple of days, Mission Control gradually adjusted the internal temperature from Houston. Then there was the wake-up tradition, a habit that dates back to Apollo. Each morning, Mission Control plays a song chosen by the crew. On Flight Day 4, the song was Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan. The capsule communicator in Houston faded it out early. Wiseman's reaction, radioed back to Earth, was essentially that the whole crew had been holding out for the chorus. Food was another compromise. Orion has no refrigerator, so nothing fresh went up. What went up instead was a catalog of 189 menu items, pre-selected months in advance after the crew had tasted and rated each one at the Space Food Systems Laboratory at NASA's Johnson Space Center. Most of it was freeze-dried or thermostabilized, packaged in vacuum-sealed, flexible pouches designed to prevent spillage and minimize particulates. To actually eat, the astronauts used a water dispenser and food warmer to rehydrate and heat food. Squirt water into the pouch, heat it in a briefcase-sized warmer. Eat with a spoon, carefully, so nothing floated free and jammed a vent. Shrimp cocktail was on the menu. So were eggs, beef, rice dishes, and a rotating set of snacks. Mealtimes were scheduled, partly for nutrition and partly because a structured day helps preserve a sense of normalcy when sunrise is happening every hour and a half. If you want to understand what these missions actually look like from inside the capsule, not just the NASA press release version, subscribe. We dig into stories like this every week. The part everyone wants to know about is the toilet. Orion had one. That alone made it a luxury. The Apollo crews didn't have a toilet at all. They used what amounted to a bag taped to the body. The Orion system is called the Universal Waste Management System, and it uses a vacuum system that separates urine and feces, venting the liquid into space and storing the solids for return. About 6 hours into the flight, the toilet broke. The fan controller malfunctioned. Astronauts could still use the commode for solid waste, but they couldn't pee in it. At least one crew member had to resort to a flight-approved urine collection bag while Houston talked Coke through a 5-hour repair. The toilet came back online. Then, on flight day 3, it broke again in a different way. A wastewater vent line appeared to be clogged with frozen urine. To melt it, flight controllers actually rotated the entire spacecraft so that one specific vent line pointed toward the sun. It worked. The capsule communicator's relieved radio call became one of the most replayed moments of the mission. Breaking news: you are go for all types of use of the toilet. Even when it was working, the toilet was extraordinarily loud. Coke told National Geographic in an onboard video that the crew had to wear hearing protection to use it. There were no showers. Each astronaut had a personal hygiene kit with teeth brushing equipment, soap, a hairbrush, items for shaving, liquid soap, water, and dry shampoo. At one point after a workout session, Glover took his shirt off on camera to wipe himself down with baby wipes. NASA cut the live stream briefly, then resumed broadcasting once the crew confirmed they didn't mind. Exercise itself happened for about 30 minutes a day, on a flywheel installed directly below the side hatch, which doubles as a step when the crew gets inside Orion on launch day. Half an hour sounds light, but for a 10-day mission, it's enough to hold off the worst of the microgravity bone and muscle loss. There were also quieter daily rituals. Every morning, before brushing their teeth or exercising, each astronaut blotted saliva onto special paper stored in pocket-sized booklets, feeding an immunology study that tracks how deep space travel affects human physiology. The paper method exists because Orion has no freezer to store liquid samples. And the windows. Wiseman said the windows were already dirty because the crew enjoyed looking out of them so much, and he eventually asked Houston for the cleaning procedure. On flight day 3, ground controllers warned that the sun was heating the window shades too much. The crew's fix was low-tech. They taped t-shirts over the glass for extra shade. On flight day 6, 5.5 days after launch, Integrity swung behind the far side of the moon. At closest approach, the capsule was about 4,000 miles above the lunar surface. Later that same day, they reached a maximum distance of 252,756 miles from Earth, surpassing the previous distance record set by Apollo 13 astronauts in 1970. No humans had ever been that far from home. Shortly after the flyby, a recorded message came up from Houston. It was Charlie Duke, the Apollo 16 astronaut who walked on the moon in 1972, welcoming the new crew. His lunar module had also been called Orion. On April 10th, at 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time, Integrity splashed down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of San Diego, completing a journey of 694,481 miles. The crew was fine. The spacecraft was fine. The heat shield held. The toilet, against all odds, was still running. Every detail that went wrong, from the frozen vent line to the cold cabin to the jammed fan to the dirty windows, is why the mission existed in the first place. Artemis 2 wasn't supposed to land on the moon. It was supposed to find out what 10 days inside Orion is actually like, so that the next crew, the one that will land, doesn't have to learn it the hard way. The toilet fix, the sleeping bag placements, the t-shirts taped over the glass. That's the data. That's what 10 days of broken, brilliant, mundane problem-solving looks like inside a capsule the size of 2 minivans halfway to the moon.